Hello and welcome to JagaVision episode 102. I'm Jared Nyberg, I'm your co-host. You can find some of our episodes archived onto youtube.com/JagaSilk. And check out our conversations we've had with some amazing folks from the tea industry. Last time I was on was actually 2 weeks ago, because in the meantime we've had the Victoria Tea Festival Revival, which was super fun. And then took a week off from the show. And here we are back again today. So today's show, I'm actually going to be doing a firing session. So if you've been following over the years we've been doing JagaVision, this won't be the first time that I'm firing, but I haven't done one in a while. And I thought it'd be interesting as there's stuff we're learning, and I've just been having some fun with microclimates, and yeah, and I'd really like to talk about that a bit. So anyhow, I am gonna be using my tea roaster here. It's a unit that we brought in from a tea equipment manufacturer in China. We did look at some Japanese tea roasters, as our connections are more definitely run in the Japanese vein, I guess. My co-owner, my wife, Miu, is from Japan, and so we get to regularly visit. Yeah, we're just... I think my guest might have joined us. Let me see. No, that's not the case. And so we have a lot of opportunity to visit different companies there. Unfortunately, either the units that I looked at were too small or they were too large. And to find a unit like this where I could toast up, 2 or 3 kilos of tencha at a time was a lot more challenging. I needed to be something like a 30 kilogram unit. It would have taken up quite a bit of room, and I just wanted a smaller unit so that I could have our experiments, and who knows what the future holds. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, I'm gonna start the process though pretty quickly here. I'm essentially going to begin a timer so that I can kind of keep track of where I'm at in the process. I've already checked the temperature, but check it again. We're looking at 80 degrees in the drum here. When I put the tea in, it's going to drop quite significantly, and it will never quite get back up to that 80 degrees. Really, one of my goals for starting is a surface temperature in the drum of closer to 70 degrees. But I found going a little bit hotter to start has been really improving the flavors that I'm getting off of the different teas, and we're getting a little bit more umami and flavor structure, which is what we're going for sure with our selections. What I'm firing today is a tencha from Mr. Takaki. Mr. Takaki has been on the show a number of times live from Japan. He even was flown in by the Tea Appreciation Society in 2019 to speak at the Tea Festival. And by the way, if you weren't following the show, on the 22nd of October, the Tea Society, if you go to victeafestrevival.org, has an amazing archived version of the symposium. One of the farmers that joined us for the symposium this year was actually Yamaguchi-san. Yeah, okay, so this is pretty nice. Let me see if I can't switch over the camera. That should... Can we see that? Maybe not. I want you to be able to see this. There we go, okay. So, you see the tencha, a little bit... It looks yellow in this camera, but it's actually quite green in my hands. See it roasting away. I should move quick actually at this point. I'm getting distracted, wanting to show you the tea. The load is really fast, so I'm kind of breaking some rules. Really, in a perfect world, I'd have some sort of conveyor system where I could empty this in very quickly, because every second that I have tea in there, and I have some roasting and some not, makes for an uneven roast. So comes to mind that pre-cutting these bags before I start would be a smart way to go about it. of things I could do. But at the end of the day, if it tastes good, we're okay. And then our next goal is for it to taste consistently good. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to put it in 6 ways. These are all 500 grams. So I'm roasting 3 kilos today. Is my goal. So this tea is called a Yabukita Amefuri. So Amefuri literally means rainfall. Yabukita is the name of the cultivar. So I talk about this a lot in the series about varieties of tea, and probably the most ubiquitous tea cultivar in Japan is definitely this Yabukita cultivar. It produces a good amount of finished product. Reading 39 degrees to start here. The drum has dropped down to 60 degrees very significantly. Just double check everything's going as it should. Good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's a very widely grown cultivar. It produces a lot. It tastes good. What more can you ask for as a farmer? Abundance, good flavor. Now that being said, the color isn't super good. There are other cultivars that do produce nicer flavors. And again, a cultivar is a cultivated variety. Varietal is something that can't really combine easily in nature. In the world of coffee, Robusta and Arabica beans are a good example of 2 different varietals. In tea, you are going to find that Camellia sinensis varietal sinensis, Camellia sinensis varietal cambodianensis, Camellia sinensis varietal assamica are sort of sub-major varietals that are then broken up into different cultivars. And this might be easier to understand in the world of apples. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you're choosing between a Gala and a Red Delicious and a Granny Smith, they're all apples, but they're gonna be different cultivars of apples, and they're all gonna taste different from one another. So Yabukita is a cultivar of Camellia sinensis, varietal sinensis. The Amefuri component in the name is actually something that we've assigned to it based off of where it was grown. So Takaki-san actually names this particular lot Amefuri. So he'll grow the Yabukita cultivar in different lots. So if you go on our webpage right now, for example, there's a Yabukita Hasegawa by Takaki-san. Now that particular cultivar is from a garden that was abandoned, and Takaki-san rescued the tea garden with the intention of growing everything in that garden spray-free. We've been asking for a spray-free matcha from him for quite a long time, and we were able to get that with this, with the promise that we're going to buy everything that he produces off of that garden. So if you get our Yabukita Hasegawa off of our webpage, then you know that it's Takaki's experiment with organic production, which I think has turned out really well. He seems to be pretty pleased with it. Every year we've been able to purchase whatever he produces, and it's been tasting really good. This particular selection, the Amefuri, is not spray-free, but what's really interesting about this one is we were able to get a hold of it in its ara state. So what I mean by that is ara means rough or raw. So it's not that it's a raw leaf, as you might, think raw, like unprocessed completely. Not like that. I like to make the comparison of getting your croissants par-baked and then finishing them yourself. This tencha, which is what you mill into matcha, right? The product for the botanical you need for making matcha has to be Camellia sinensis. It's been shade grown, first flush harvest. Well, it doesn't have to be first flush, but the good stuff does. And then it needs to be deveined and destemmed. and then you need to micro mill it down to less than 10 microns. And so the tencha that you micro mill goes through a process where they turn it into what's called ara tencha, where it's almost ready to mill. But if they break it up and make it small and kind of toast it a bit, they're going to be oxidizing it a little bit more than they want to. So when it's held in storage, it's held in sort of a almost ready to mill point, and that's called ara tencha. When you want what they call shiage tencha, or tencha that's ready to mill, there's a separation process, a breaking up of it, and you're going to take that tencha and you're going to, oh, it's smelling very good. Yeah. Once it gets to 70 degrees in here, then I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, because we want to hold it at 70 degrees for 5 minutes. Yeah, my drum is definitely hot enough. It's at 70 degrees, but my tea is not quite there. Almost there, almost there. So I'll be speaking over my shoulder like this as I measure the temperature, because we're so close. But to get the tencha to be shiage tencha, ready to mill, they break it up a bit, make it smaller so it's easier to go through. We've actually milled ara tencha before. It is horribly slow. We've hit 70 degrees. So my timer that was scheduled to go off in 5 minutes, I'm going to reset for 5 minutes. I have a timer that's going the whole time since we started the roast. We're at 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I was a little slow putting everything in here. Normally I'm at 8 minutes, anywhere from 8 to 9 minutes is when I hit this point normally, so I'm a little bit behind, 30 seconds. Hopefully the flavor's gonna be good, and I will be forgiven for my transgression, moving too slowly as I roast in front of you guys. Anyway, shiage tencha, they've made it smaller so that it's easier to mill. There's also a finish firing component. So that's what I'm doing right now, and that's essentially reducing the moisture down from about 5 or 6% all the way down to 4%. When you do that, you're heating the leaves a bit, toasting them, and this is going to develop certain flavor components to come forward, and it's going to take other flavor components and have them take a back seat or dissolve them altogether. And how that's accomplished, again, is through heat. There's a great concept around toasting. If you look up Maillard, interesting work. It's like when you toast, that's the Maillard. It's called a Maillard reaction. When you toast bread and make toast, I should say. Coffee roasting, you're doing this as well, and so it's like a browning process. I'm not actually browning these leaves, but I am cooking them a bit, and that cooking component, or that baking, because it's such a low heat that I'm working with, what it is accomplishing is it's reducing the rawness up to the flavor dynamic. So in Kyoto, I often talk about how Kyoto likes to have that raw taste. One of the ways they accomplish that is by finishing the tea at the factory, for the most part, in terms of moisture, residual moisture. So they don't do this finish firing component. Some tea companies do. But again, another interesting thing about tea firing is that oftentimes the company that's doing the tea firing is not necessarily the company that grew the tea. So you have tea companies buying from co-ops who've in turn bought from farmers. And so when you see garden in a tea company's name, it doesn't necessarily mean that they farmed the tea, even if it says like so-and-so tea farm in Japan. Because they're often buying from a co-op who then they blend the different farmer selections together. So it may be single origin, it may be fairly much just a collection of different teas from local farms, which is great. One of my favorite wineries in the Okanagan doesn't grow their own grapes. They're called Arrowleaf. They're amazing, and they, as far as I understand, buy grapes from local producers, and then their kind of niche is to just produce fantastic wines, just really good control over the fermentation. Things may have changed, or I may be misunderstanding this, but the fact is those kinds of companies exist. But that is definitely normal in Japan, is for companies to maybe grow a little bit of their own, but not the majority of what they are selling. And so what's been really interesting for us is to buy single cultivar selections from farms directly and try and participate in a little bit of this end process. So we've been milling our own matcha for quite some time, and getting into this firing component is a little bit more recent in our history.
Yeah. Oh, that smells so good. Yeah.
So we get a chance to just really bring out some sweetness. I find it makes it a little nutty, and it makes it taste more like something you get out of Fukuoka. Southern Japan has a penchant for finished firing, and since Takaki-san's from Southern Japan, it worked out. But to get this product at this point has taken many years of effort. It's not a normal thing to be able to get, or a normal kind of moment in the production process to be able to get. We have to really time this and agree to a certain amount of tencha that's brought to this point in advance. So the farmer, in this case Takaki-san, is able to talk to the factory and to I think, for himself, like he doesn't finish fire it himself, it gets finished fired through a contract that he has, and to be able to just sort of negotiate with them and be able to just say, hey, can you hold off on finish firing this tea? Has taken some work. So we're very grateful to be able to get this. Now, when we did get it, we were told that this was a Yabukita, and it fit in our category of sort of cafe standard. But we faced a bit of a quandary. We already had a Yabukita that was spray-free, so we could have said spray-free Yabukita by Takaki and then standard Yabukita by Takaki. But it's so cool to be able to finish fire like this. So even though we can't get the spray-free stuff in its ara or rough state, we can with this. And so we started talking about how we could differentiate. And we already kind of had a system in place because of a different relationship that we had with that we still have with Fujioka-san. Fujioka-san had experimented with giving us different okumidoris. Again, okumidori is a cultivar. We had 3 different okumidoris from 3 different areas of his farm, so we just asked him what he called those areas. One is Shimoyama, one is Okuda, and then the cafe standard, the more entry-level one, is Fukada. So when you see okumidori, Fukada, or Shimoyama, or Okuda, those suffixes are talking about the microclimate, really. It's what that farmer's calling that area of their tea garden. So we just went with that. And so I asked Takaki-san what he calls this tea garden and what he calls the other tea garden. So that's Hasegawa for the spray-free, Amefuri for this Ara Tencha opportunity. So what I'm doing right now is I achieved my 5 minutes of holding the tea at the 70 degrees centigrade benchmark, and now I've increased the temperature quite significantly. And once I hit my end goal temp here, which I've experimented with, I will drop the tea. And we've been, our goal definitely is to achieve these results fairly quickly. But one of the things, the big differences between us and Takaki-san is he's working with a gas roaster. We have an electric roaster, so yeah, it's different. Definitely different. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah,
Smelling absolutely amazing.
another selection from Takaki-san that you'll be able to see on our webpage once I get the retail information ready, so that we have a story to tell about it and can actually go up on our webpage. Is it's an okumidori, and his lot name for that okumidori is Okubo. So when you see okumidori Okubo, you'll know that it's been fired in-house. You can also go, when you go to JagaSilk.com and you go through the matcha selections, when you're looking at sort of the information about them, there's going to be a section that says that it's milled in Victoria. Below that, if there's a line that says fired in Victoria by JagaSilk, you're going to know that it's a finished fired selection. We're not going to put that on there, of course, if we haven't done the firing. Not all of our Tencha is fired internally. We can only really fire stuff that's come to us this way, but we do sometimes experiment. So you may see some of the, especially the Yamaguchi selections, where they're a little bit more raw. We've sometimes experimented with taking, say, a Kuromamezaka microclimate Yabukita from Yamaguchi-san, and we fired it in here, and it's been pretty good. So I think it's worth the price of admission. Yeah. I've actually noticed that this last blast of heat is extremely important for aromatic buildup. I think that what's happening now is a fairly fast process of cooking and heating and getting it really, really like ready to rock and roll. I actually kind of want to do another sort of view for you. Let's see if I can't do a dual camera here. Try that. So that's the tea kind of doing its therapeutic magic. And then with cooking too, it's interesting because you'll find that when you're cooking, say like a stir fry or something, or even a pasta, that final blast of heat right before you mix in the noodles can help to develop some really interesting flavors. So if you have it kind of simmering for a bit, it's kind of interesting, or if you have it completely off, the heat is completely turned off, and at the very end you hit it with a blast of heat, you can also produce some really interesting aromatics. There we go, temperature's going up. If this gets over 110 degrees, apparently it starts steaming pretty good, so we definitely want to stay away from that. Yeah. Isn't that, I just love this process. I'm just kind of hanging out with the tea, watching it spin in the drum here. It should be one of those like YouTube videos that you fall asleep to, like, you know, laundry tumbling in the dryer or something. It's so therapeutic. Yeah. Turn that off. Go back to my scene here. Yeah, and unfortunately it looks like we won't be joined by our regular guest here. Okay. But yeah, no, it's pretty pretty fun. We're almost done. I'm gonna go get the cooler mat. So this is made out of bamboo, and this is what we drop the tea onto. And this is going to let us cool the leaves. If you get a chance, you should go onto our YouTube channel, and you should watch the finish firing session we did with Sam Jones. That was really, really fun. Sam Jones owns 2% Jazz here in Victoria, and he also owns Fix Chocolate. So he does roasting for both companies. He loves roasting coffee. He's done it. He's like a trailblazer. Been roasting coffee. I think he's the second roaster in Victoria, and he's been doing it for over 20 years. 1996. So wow, yeah, pretty soon 30 years. Insane. For me, I was just really interested in hearing his thoughts on roasting and what he's learned from, you know, where some areas where there's some connectivity between coffee and chocolate roasting. And he was talking about, you know, the chocolate breaking really easily if the drum is moving, like if it's dropping too much. And I've definitely noticed that when we're firing our sencha, I don't get big enough leaves because the tooth, as they call it, or the ledge inside of the roaster here, it was responsible for making the leaves sort of fall so that they don't just stick to the drum and get too hot. It's a little bit too long, and so the leaves do get broken a bit. That's fine for the tencha, because we're going to be milling it anyhow. But that was an interesting insight. Another insight was just definitely how important the cooling process is. So I'm just going to go wash my hands. And we're going to be dropping this momentarily. We're at 96, 97, and yeah, we're almost there. And I'll be dropping this, and then I'll be moving the leaves around. So we're ready, and I'll be cooling them. Drop down. Now I'm gonna cool it. Set a timer again for 30 minutes. I need to check it when it's done. And then all this time that it's sitting here, it's hot. So you can imagine the tencha, you can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm cooling the tencha leaves by moving them around, and this is going to down, because they're going to build up heat otherwise. And we don't want that. We want these nice and cool. This is a process of just exposing as much of it as we can to the cool air. And I'm also cooling down the roaster. Again, it doesn't get any hotter than 100 degrees. Think of that in baking, not that hot, but has a profound effect on the end flavor, and it's super interesting. And the Yabukita Amefuri, I actually was doing a session, a roasting session earlier this week, and I did 2 different roasts, and to taste them side by side was super fascinating. Because the only difference really between them, there was the same coordinates, one came right out of the freezer, it was really cold, and then the other one had thawed. The one after it had a chance, at least a couple hours anyways, to really thaw out. So that was really interesting. There we have it. So, that's nice and cool now. I'm gonna keep that tea roaster cooling, and then we're gonna put this into some bins, and then we'll be milling this on the morrow. Anyhow, that's the show today. I just wanted to take you through a roast of the Yabukita Amefuri by Takaki. I think, again, inspiring stuff working with these farmers, developing relationships so that we can get our hands on some really interesting and hard to get moments in the production process so that we can participate a little bit more here at JagaSilk. I hope this was interesting. Are getting the right temperatures, when you increase, like just going from A to B isn't going to cut it. You got to hold it at a particular temperature to develop different flavor dynamics, etc. I hope that was interesting. And that's going to change depending on the time of year, depending on the cultivar, and there's just so much more to learn. So really excited to continue to bring finish firing to be a part of our process here at JagaSilk. And yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Ask them in the comment section of our YouTube video. You can also email us. You can go and buy some of our matcha. Go to jagasilk.com and hit subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to know when we go live, then click the notification bell, and we really appreciate it. And then don't forget to check out the archived video footage of the Tea Festival, Tea Symposium on victeafestrevival.org. And we'll see you next week, Thursday, 2 o'clock. Take care. Bye.